Welcome to Concerned Citizens Forum. My name is Bob Del Rosso. I'm joined by co-host Beverly Hart, Bob McClintock, and special guest today is Dr. Christopher Jones, who is the vice principal of our Seekonk High School. Welcome, Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
Beverly, I'm going to turn this over to you very quickly because the off-camera discussions we've had so far with Dr. Jones are so far over my head that I'm going to turn this over to you as a former school teacher.
Well, I did meet with Dr. Jones the other day, and I came away excited about education, which I haven't been in a long time. Excited about where our high school may very well be going as long as he gets support, which we're trying to give him from the public part of it. And he has a project that is dear to his heart and is leading to what is dear to our heart, that we need to have the young people today, and I mean all the students, know about their country, their government, locally, on the state level and national level, meaning civics should come back. And that's what he is trying to do, but he has a project first that he's working on. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. First, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about something like this and explain the opportunities that we're trying to provide for the students. I guess the easiest way to start is to kind of talk about the beginning and how it ended up beginning. I have a relationship with a Dr. Alan Stoskopf. He's out of UMass Boston. He's a research scholar for UMass Boston, and he is there with the Joyner Institute, the William Joyner Institute in Boston. And working with them, he became the senior advisor for their educational outreach program. So this past summer, he gave me a phone call and asked me if I had some school teachers that would be willing to go to a workshop that the William Joyner Institute was putting on, having to do with humanizing conflict and the social consequences of war. And so, of course, I asked a few of our teachers, and it was designed to be an interdisciplinary thing. Other schools were invited. There were probably about 8 other schools that went, private institutions, charter schools, and public schools. And it was designed to get teachers' creativity going about how they could approach these topics with students to create a deeper understanding of the topics by looking at context, looking at perspective, and so forth. So the workshop occurred. The teachers came back and talked to me and said that they loved the workshop. They thought it was fantastic. And they had a couple ideas. So from there, we have a couple workshops coming up, but I'll just talk about the first one that we have actually happening tomorrow. The Social Studies Department and I are looking at a civics course, and we would like to have a civics course in the high school because we feel that it's a key part of education for students today. We talk about the idea of producing well-rounded students, producing students that are good problem solvers, critical thinkers, and productive citizens. Well, you need civics to be a productive citizen. You need to know how to be involved and how government works and so forth. So in an effort to do that, we decided that this project with the William Joyner Institute, we would have students as part of the civics course, the service portion of it, we want to base some of it on service. We would have them go out and interview the local veterans in Seekonk, because that would serve multiple purposes. One, it creates an engaging type of thing for the students to do that's relevant to their lives. These are individuals that are living amongst them in Seekonk. And two, it creates an authentic, real, consistent relationship between the school and the town. And originally the plan was to interview these veterans and have their interviews transcribed and put into the Library of Congress. So what better way to honor our veterans than to memorialize their stories about how they have helped our country, and they all come from Seekonk, and those stories are important. So we were going to do that. That was plan one. Because of all the other things that come up, we couldn't get the civics curriculum written quick enough to be approved by the school committee to then be approved as a course at the high school. So we looked at each other, myself and the history department chair, and said, okay, what can we do? Because we still want to work on this relationship that we have, or that we're beginning to have, with the Joyner Institute. So in discussing this, we said, well, we'd still like to do the interview piece, because that's a deeper understanding for students of what goes on. And looking at it from perspective, we said, why don't we have veterans, local veterans, come into the classrooms and do an interview, but almost like a reverse focus group type of thing. So they'll be in an interview in front of the whole class, and the students will write about it. They'll take notes as the veterans are speaking and giving their experiences. And then once the veteran leaves, the teacher who's facilitating this interview will then have the students do more of a writing project about perspective. And the interesting piece about this, or this is where the real learning comes in, is all of those students that heard the same thing from one individual are going to have different accounts of what they heard and different things about what they felt were important. And so from there, the teacher will facilitate discussion around that. They'll look at other primary resources, and then in the spring, what we'd like to do is have the students look at other primary resources again, compare with the veterans' accounts, and then do their benchmark writing assignment, which is the benchmark assessment, in the springtime for that class. So you'll get a lot of working with primary resources, a lot of more authentic learning going on that's relevant to students, which is what we want, what we want to get in the end. That's going to occur, but that takes a little bit of training and a little bit of work. So what we have going on tomorrow, actually, for 2 hours, is we're having Travis Bickford come down, Mr. Travis Bickford. He's the founder and currently the director of the Veterans Hall History Project. He's out of Chicago. He's going to come down and he's going to give the story of his organization and what they're trying to achieve, because they're not a political organization. What they're trying to do is get the accounts of veterans and show how important these individuals are to us and are to our freedoms and to our country, and get their stories out there and heard. So what he's going to do is he's going to come tell his story to teachers, and then for the second half of it, he's going to work with teachers on getting them comfortable facilitating an interview and getting them comfortable actually conducting an interview. Because people say, I can interview somebody, and it's an easy thing to do. Not so much. I learned that as I was doing my doctoral work. I had to interview certain individuals, and then I watched other people interview that have been doing it for a long time and realized how much of an amateur I was, and how much work I needed. So it's something that you have to work up to. So he's going to work with teachers, and then they're going to move forward and do this with their students. So it's an incredible opportunity because of the deeper understanding, because of the relevance, because of the what I'd like to call authentic learning, rather than just out of a textbook. It's living history.
It's motivating.
Right, and it engages the students. So as we move forward with that, that's great, because that's going to hopefully turn our relationship with the Joyner Institute, with the Veterans Hall History Project, with Dr. Alan Stoskopf and UMass Boston into more of a partnership. And once that occurs, and once a few other things occur as we go along, we could be looking at something much greater as we put our civics course together, with a lot of support from larger institutions as far as resources go. The Joyner Institute's a fantastic organization that has tons of resources. What they would like to do is get those resources into the hands of teachers, because what we're discovering is when you don't lock teachers into a box, and you let them be creative, you let them create curriculum, and you let them challenge students, you come out with a much better product and a much more challenging product than if you just script something. That organic process is what really produces results.
It's a lot like some of the programs we've had about what's the problem with Common Core and what their philosophy is compared to what you just said. Get the teachers involved, the educators who know the students. It should be a local, not a federal option.
Right, and I like, that's one of the reasons I like this project. I like the idea, because we talk about professional development when we're talking about helping teachers out, and teachers really need that support. But too often we get caught up in professional development in a box. Schools bring in an outside person and tell the teachers some things they should be doing, that's the newest thing, and then they leave. And we're left with maybe a phone call, maybe a visit, and that doesn't really support the teachers. And then what Seekonk High School has done in the district of Seekonk is moving more towards, and this is one of the reasons I'm really happy that I'm here, is they're moving more towards even in-house professional development. We have buildings full of experts that teach every day, that know how to differentiate instruction, that know how to get students engaged, that know how to manage a classroom. We have all kinds of experts. So what we're moving more towards is having those experts, teachers, teach the other teachers in the district. You know, we talk about students who, if you want a student to believe something, or you want to convince a student of something, there is no better way than to get that student convinced by having other students, their own peer group, tell them. And no matter how old, how wise we are, how knowledgeable we are, it doesn't matter unless it comes from their peer group.
Yeah.
Well, teachers, there's nothing more convincing than having a teacher teach other teachers as to what works. And why? Because they know. They're in the classroom every day. They're in, you know, some refer to it as they're in the trenches. They're there in front of students doing what they do best every day. So there's no better teacher than a teacher. So we're trying to move towards that. What this project does is it really allows teachers to be creative. We have given them, and I've talked to Dr. Stoskopf quite a bit about this. We're not giving them a framework as we're building this project. We're saying, here are some ideas. This is what we're doing. Run with it. And we've found that this veterans piece is one of the things they've come up with. A fantastic example, because we're including middle school teachers as well. There's going to be 4 middle school teachers at this workshop tomorrow, so we can bring it into the middle school. One of the things that stuck, it's a fantastic example, is that soldiers go overseas to active duty, and they fight. Their job, quite bluntly, is to kill. That's part of their job. So they go overseas to active duty, they get in firefights, they kill people, which has all kinds of different consequences for them emotionally, socially. They go do that, but they are a hero. They go over there and they're a good soldier, and that's what they're doing, and that's what they're supposed to do. So they come back, and now they're in another world where people say, yes, you're a hero, you're a soldier, you're a fought, but maybe don't have a deeper understanding of that and don't understand the context, and they say, but you killed people. And they don't quite understand that. So those veterans, very important stories quite often don't get told because of that, and because there's that wall between that. So if we can get students to understand that, the whole idea of humanizing conflict and understanding the social consequences of war, we can do that. As an idea, because we brought English in too. We brought our English department in too. So now we have our English and social studies departments working together in the high school, which is what education should be. It shouldn't be separate silos. They should all overlap and be interdisciplinary. We have the English department who has now looked at their 9th grade curriculum, because they're going to be going to this, and they're saying, we need to change the focus of our essential questions. And so they're changing the focus of their essential question to, what is a hero? And the different types of heroes. They're going to look at the different types of heroes and have students write about it. The civic heroes, the modern heroes, the war heroes, and the differences between those heroes and how they're perceived by others. And one of the major things they're going to do is they studied the Odyssey in 9th grade. The Odyssey is a tough read to get through, and it's complicated, especially at 9th grade. So the English department got very excited about this as we were talking about it, and said, you know what? Let's look at the Odyssey and Odysseus, and as he goes place to place, coming back home, why don't we look at how veterans come home, and that homecoming piece, how people are perceiving them as they come to different areas. So that's, you know, they're going to be looking at that. The history department's going to be looking at the interviews specifically, and we're going to go from there.
You mentioned art, and you told me something about what the art department was going to try to get involved in. It would be nice to hear that.
Sure, that's going to be a very, again, a hands-on, authentic type of thing, a very powerful project. Through the Joyner Institute, again, we have this artist, Manu Imami, who is going to visit the school next week. She's a well-known artist. She's had displays at the Museum of Fine Arts. Her workshop is at the Museum of Fine Arts. She's got quite the story, let's put it that way. She's, I believe, an Iranian woman who is, I believe, I don't want to misspeak, but she's a Kurd, she's a Sunni Muslim, And so she's about, if you know anything about that type of culture, she's about a 4 or 5 time minority. I mean, we talk about minorities in our country, who, you know, it was difficult for her to study art in that area. So she's come over here. Her husband was a veteran of the Iran-Iraq conflict, which unfortunately a lot of students don't know too much about these days. Absolutely brutal conflict. Her last, or one of her major works that she did, or series of works, I'm not sure the specific term you're supposed to use, had to do all around prosthetic limbs. And so she has these different pieces of artwork dealing with prosthetic limbs and people that have lost limbs and things like that due to conflict. So she, again, is about the social consequences of war and conflict. The fantastic thing about this is she's been generous enough. She's going to come down to our school and speak to, again, 3 middle school teachers, 4 of our teachers at the high school, English, history, art teachers. Not only that, I just found out word that she's going to bring pieces from her workshop at the Museum of Fine Arts that the students can look at, deal with, and the art teachers at the high school are going to study what her background is, basically why she does the art that she does, and then they're going to have the students perform pieces of art, put together pieces of art out of clay and packing tape, from the perspective that Manu has with her work, but through the student's eyes. So you're getting 2 different perspectives for these pieces of art. It's going to be the jump-off point for an installation project that's going to be on display at the Attleboro Art Museum. So these are Seekonk High School students, because there are going to be 8 to 10 students at this presentation as well. Seekonk High School students putting their artwork on display at the Attleboro Art Museum. Manu is then going to come back down in the spring once the display is up, look at this display, and then talk to the students about their art and kind of critique their art with them. And so touch base with them again. It's a fantastic opportunity that I couldn't be happier that she's agreed to do this. When she comes down next week, along with these pieces, she's going to talk at first with the teachers and the students present, give her background, and then for the second hour or so of that workshop, she's going to work with the students, with the 8 to 10 students that the teachers have selected, and she's going to help them start their projects. And to take that even further, she's doing a project right now. Her current work is Letters from the Hand, and I've looked at some of the things that she has, and they're tracings of hands. And they're by all types of different people. They're by kids, they're by adults. So all the different hands are different. Some are very rudimentary traces, some are very fine traces. And then they have a message in their hand about the social consequences of war and humanizing conflict and the pieces that we need to look at. She's going to have the students each do a hand and write a message in their hand from what she's talked about in her workshop and some of their thoughts, and she's going to incorporate those hands into her current work. So that's education. So that's gaining a deeper understanding and engaging students in what's important by understanding context, perspective, and it's authentic.
Doctor, you, off camera, we talked about history repeating itself. You just shocked me talking about this veterans program, because my father, who was born in 1888 in the town of Wallingford, Connecticut, used to talk about a program they had when he was in school where the Civil War veterans would come and talk to the students in school.
That's fantastic.
The Civil War veterans. So, and then that was in elementary school in a small town like Wallingford, which you're familiar with.
Yep, practically neighbors. We are neighbors.
And isn't it a shame that somebody didn't pick up on that and continue it until today?
Right.
But if we study in the past and find the good parts and repeat them and then improve, we're going forward instead of backwards or just marking time.
Right, and that's how we learn. We don't want to mark time. We need to do, look, students today are engaged differently. Different things are important to them, and unless you do something that engages students, that makes this material relevant to them, it's not really going to be worth much. I had mentioned to you earlier when we were talking that, you know, if we're preparing students to be successful in the future, to be productive citizens. Success comes in many different forms and fashions. And quite frankly, we're preparing them to go out into a world that is more connected than ever. The competition is higher than ever. We were talking earlier about how students today are learning things at an age where, you know, you, myself, we look at it and we're like, wow, we never had to learn anything like that at that age. But that competition is out there where they need that. So instead of boxing it in, we need to teach them, you know, some people, and I told you I don't like to use educational jargon too much, instead of teaching them in a box about facts and figures and things you need to know, we need to teach them those soft skills. We need to teach them how to think critically, solve problems, and we need to teach them how to move forward in the face of difficulties, because they're going to reach difficulties when they get out there. And unless we do that and make it relevant, they're not going to pick those things up. So, I mean, that's the importance of education. Realistically, they're going out into the world for jobs that don't exist yet, or jobs that are, or that hopefully jobs they create. They find a niche when they get out, and they create it because it's a need.
Yeah, they had one of the astronauts on yesterday on television, and he was talking about NASA is putting more money into the program, and they are recruiting right now. And they said, well, why? He said, why not? Because we've dropped the ball. Everybody's ahead of us now, and we need to start. And we need to start while they're young and excite the children again, because we had a president that did that to all of us, and now we don't have anybody doing that. And we need to have people like you, an educator, exciting people to say, yes, there were things that were going on, we dropped them, we need to do them again, let's find out how to do it.